It's never easy to go to the Huntsman Center if you're BYU and win a rivalry game, and the Cougars did just that. They handle their business in Salt Lake City. We're also going to talk a little BYU football because Shmev is back.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into a special edition of Locked On Cougars. We like to call them a postcast here on the Locked On Cougars feed. As always, I'm Jake Hatch, your host, 14-year credential media member at BYU, resident BYU expert and insider. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And thank you to all of you who make us over at Locked On America's #1 sports podcast network. All right, so the BYU Cougars handle their business in the Huntsman Center, beating the Utes 89-85. And the Cougars, that showed some gumption because Utah absolutely brought it in this game, and BYU had to fend off multiple runs from the Utes, and to BYU's credit, they found a way. This was a game, remember last year, go back just 1 year ago, and BYU found a way to muck up what was an easily winnable game against the Utes. Did none such thing tonight as they handle Utah 89-84. Nice part is BYU continues to have their big three shine, and that's kind of how this BYU team's going to go this year, it feels like. Rob Wright III has 23 points, AJ Dybantsa 20, his ninth straight 20-point outing, and then Richie Saunders for the second straight game leads BYU in scoring with 24. And the other thing about Richie Saunders, Boardman gets paid, as a lot of people like to talk about, and I've got to mute my phone here before we get too far into this, but he has 14 rebounds to lead BYU, and there's a famous phrase out there, Boardman gets paid, and it kind of shows that Richie Saunders, this is a guy that knows how to make winning plays. Remember, go back 2 or 3 seasons when he was BYU's sixth man. Actually, it was like 3 seasons ago, if I recall correctly. And he was being called the glue guy of glue guys by guys like John Rothstein. Well, he's morphed into a superstar player, but he still makes those winning plays, those glue player type plays that help BYU win basketball games. And that was a real nice win for the BYU Cougars on the road. That pushes them to their 12th straight win. They're 14-1 overall, 3-0 in Big 12 play. And I really do think that this is going to be a win that BYU, while it may not help them when it comes to the metrics, the net rating, KenPom and the others, you feel good. It's a rivalry win. That in and of itself is what you celebrate. Because like I said, this is a Q3 win right now for BYU, and pending how the Big 12 goes for Utah the rest of the way, it could sink as low as a Q4. So it's not a win that you're looking at saying, hey, man, that's a resume-building win. But it's a rivalry win. They're important wins to handle your business in state and show what you can do. And as I said, BYU had been on a slide up at the Huntsman Center in recent seasons. So really solid win for the Cougars. And it's kind of what I said on Friday. I thought last year going into that game against Utah up at the Huntsman Center a year ago, I was like, okay, BYU is going to roll. This is going to be kind of a changing in this rivalry. No such luck. And it kind of shows that when these two teams get together, especially up there in the Huntsman Center, crazy things happen. So really nice to see BYU handle their business and get the job done out there. Other thing I wanted to point out is that final stanza of the game. I don't get for the life of me, BYU, as a lot of teams are doing these days, tries to foul up 3. It was Johnson. I think it was Johnson. It wasn't Johnson that had the ball in his hands. It was Brown, had the ball in his hands. BYU tried to foul him because the old adage is you foul up 3, and it seems to help you win basketball games. They don't call it, and Brown goes down, touches out of bounds, and it's a turnover. And he's begging for a foul call, but it's like, they tried to foul you. The referees were doing no such thing, even though they had called a lot of other fouls. And I'll just say the 2 words that absolutely drive me nuts, and that's Tony Padilla. I said it, if you're following me on X on Twitter before the game, when I saw that he was in this game, he's going to interject himself into this game, somehow, some way, book it. And one of my good friends, Scott Gerard, who I work with at the KSL Sports, said, death, taxes, and Padilla. And yeah. For the life of me, there was a clean block by Abdullah Ahmed, Bidu Ahmed, and Tony Padilla calls it from the reverse side, gets to go over, watch the replay, and then, oh, by the way, because he's the crew chief, gets to confirm his own call. college basketball officiating drives me bonkers. That's just beside the point. Yes, Robo Saguaro did get a haircut yesterday, rocking a little bit of a fade here. So yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for noticing it. So big win for the Cougars. So like I said, it's not a resume builder, but it's a feel-good win for BYU. So that's the nice part about this is the Cougars get the job done. And the two things I want to talk about in terms of things to improve for BYU is BYU has to find a way to have more contributions from their guard line off of the bench, whether it's Tyler Morus. We did not see Alexei Kostic tonight. They've got to find an option off the bench at guard. And yes, I know that Dawson Baker's out for the year. I know that Nate Pickens is out for the year. And those two guys were probably going to be those two off the bench dudes you're counting on to kind of carry the load. But right now, there's a heavy load being imposed on BYU's starting guard line. Like I said, Richie, AJ Dybantsa, Kennard Davis Jr., that it needs to be balanced out a little bit because better teams than Utah are going to blitz guys like Rob Wright, like Richie Saunders, like AJ Dybantsa. And you have to have guys who can come in off the bench and not be a sieve defensively. That's got to improve. And by the way, overall, defensively, BYU needs to have better play in terms of overall defense. A team like Utah, Terrence Brown and Don McHenry are really, really phenomenal scoring guards, and they showed their prowess in this game. But this is a league, speaking of the Big 12, that is packed full of players that are as, if not better than, Don McHenry and Terrence Brown. So BYU has to be better in terms of their overall defensive play. Now, some foul trouble for both Abdullah Ahmed as well as Keba Keita, I think, screwed some things up defensively for BYU. But I did like in kind of the final 6 minutes of this game, we finally saw them start to really kind of mix and match defenses that really confused Utah. And that was a nice thing to see from BYU is handling their business in terms of being able to mix things up and find a way to win this game. Free throws were an issue down the stretch, but it was nice to see a response from guys like Rob Wright and especially Richie Saunders, who had missed 2 free throws earlier on in the game that were critical ones. He makes 2 to seal this win for the Cougars. So, yeah, there's good, there's bad, and there's plenty to clean up on. And I'm sure Kevin Young, I'm sure the press conference is ongoing right now. I was at home tonight because I had some other duties with my kids today that kept me away from the Huntsman Center. But it was a good, solid win, workmanlike win for BYU. And you always love a rivalry win because it's been hard to come by for BYU to go up to the Huntsman Center and win those games. So you take it, you move along here. Now you look forward to TCU at 3-0 for BYU. Can you push that win streak to 13 in a row on Wednesday night? Well, we'll get you ready for that a little bit closer. So I know some of you are asking me about a commitment about a certain offensive lineman from Stanford. We'll get to that here in a little bit. The football. Hold your horses. But we also want to say, talk about the other thing about the basketball win for BYU is this stretch for BYU is by far, as I've said multiple times on this podcast, it's the softest stretch of the 18 games in conference, and they're 3-0. So they got to push it to 4-0 as they take care of business, hopefully against TCU on Wednesday night. And then we're off and rolling at that point. You've got your breather early, speaking of BYU, and you're going to have to take advantage of that because now competition's really going to ramp up. We got the likes of Arizona out there, Texas Tech, you got Kansas, you got some heavy hitters on the horizon for BYU, and we'll take them game at a time, but really impressive win for the Cougars. All right, coming up next, though, we're going to flip over and talk a little BYU football. Busy day on the football front for BYU. We have 2 guys announcing they're running it back. One guy who my insiders group knows already is committed to BYU, at least according to his family, and he's a transfer portal pickup. We may break that down for you guys as well, and we'll get to that next as we roll on a postcast edition of Locked On Cougars right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The college football playoff is ongoing, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action every single game day of the playoff, because right now, every college football playoff game day, they get a profit boost waiting for you guys in the FanDuel app. Here's what you can do with it. You can ride with your favorite if you think this team's going to control that matchup. Let's say it's Indiana. They look absolutely unstoppable. You guys probably watched them last night. If you want to take a shot on the underdogs being the Miami Hurricanes, well, if you can bet on that upset, or you can build a parlay around the players and moments you think will decide the game, it's all available to you guys. And then you apply that profit boost and go after even bigger winnings. And when you win, FanDuel pays out instantly, which is perfect for playoff football. FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boost every single day, courtesy of your friends over at FanDuel. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And thank you for making all of us over at Locked On America's #1 sports podcast network. All right. So basketball wins and BYU continues to win on the transfer portal front, but not in the way I think a lot of you, trust me, I see the comments, are wanting them to. So if you missed it earlier today, Evan Johnson, a.k.a. Shmev, it's an incredible nickname in and of itself, announced that he is going to run it back for BYU. His return makes it essentially a clean sweep for BYU in terms of guys who are eligible to come back for 2026 for the BYU football program that have done so. The best work that a football program can do in this day and age of college football is retain its top talent on its roster, and that's exactly what BYU did. By any discernible margin, BYU, I don't think there's a program out there that can boast what BYU did when it came to the transfer portal and retaining its talent in-house. I'm talking Bear Bachmeier, LJ Martin, go down the list, include on the offensive line, guys like Bruce Mitchell, flipping over to the defensive line, Keanu Tanuvasa. I know John Talmoye-Payao is still chasing an extra year. He needs to get a waiver from the NCAA, but Isaiah Glasker at linebacker. At the cornerback spot, Trey Alexander as well as Evan Johnson. At safeties, you look at Falatau Satuala. It's been an absolutely clean sweep for BYU. And Clark, you point out that Tavion Beasley is moving on. Is Tavion Beasley a top talent for BYU? Because he's only a part-time starter. So that's my argument there. Tavion Beasley did end up at USF. So USF did pick up Tavion Beasley, but I think BYU's nickel spot was due for an upgrade, just being blunt about it. Like, nobody at that spot, Tommy Prasis, Tavion Beasley, Jonathan Cabea, not a one of them were good enough in that nickel spot. So that's one position group that, in terms of the transfer portal, probably still needs to be upgraded. If you missed the Evan Johnson one, well, that one obviously announced, but also Hunter Clegg, not that long ago, also announced that he is coming back to BYU. I didn't think that Hunter was in any danger of leaving BYU, considering he picked the Cougars coming home off of his mission after having signed with Utah out of high school. But it's nice to have this talent understanding what BYU is all about and believing in it, even though guys like Evan Johnson and, in this case, Hunter Clegg, easily could have said, hey, I want to go with my defensive coordinator and my cornerbacks coach in the case of Evan Johnson and go to Michigan. I'm sure there were overtures made. I'm not going to be have head in the sand and saying that tampering wasn't going on, because it's rampant, folks. If you think that tampering is going to be enforced at any level by the NCAA, I hate to break it to you, it's just not. But the nice part is, I think BYU, the culture that Kalani Sitake has built is absolutely impeccable. It's absolutely awesome to see that continue to shine through on this, because these players are coming back to BYU because they love what they're doing with the Cougars. And yes, the money. BYU has money, and they used it to retain their top talent. So it's a nice thing to see BYU handling their business. And some of you are asking about Smith Snowden in the comments. Some of you are asking about Zach Yamauchi. We'll get to those guys here in a little bit in terms of guys still out there in the portal BYU can add. But Psycho CD, you think this wide receiver coming from Oregon is going to be wide receiver 1. The thing about Kyler Casper, for example, is he has played 4 years of college football, has had 2 season-ending foot injuries, and has a grand total of 6 receptions. I would imagine that Parker Kingston and or JoJo Phillips are probably more primed to be BYU's wide receiver 1. But Kyler Casper, you hope he can come in and at 6'6", 210 pounds, absolutely shows that they have guys out there in the portal they're looking at in terms of potential and trying to get that out of them. But I would be hard pressed to say that, Kyler Casper is going to be your wide receiver 1 next year. I just don't see it, because the production has not been there. And coming off back-to-back season-ending foot injuries, he also needs to heal up a little bit. But the bigger point, going back to the original, is that BYU's talent, it's intact. And yes, some of you are saying, well, they still need more talent to be able to compete with the likes of a Texas Tech or play in the college football playoff. I completely agree. But the top-end talent for BYU across the board, every player that you would want BYU to retain out there, they retained. And that's laud-worthy. That is absolutely awesome. And I'm going to give a shout-out to Mark Parrish, who's a longtime listener to the show. He's a member of the Insiders Group. He actually sent me a text earlier today. I'm actually going to pull it up right here. And he asked me the question. He said, hey, Jake, wondering about the following question. What would a portal class rank with the following acquisitions? Let's say that these players were in the portal and BYU were to have pulled them into BYU from the portal. He mentions the names of LJ Martin, Bear Bachmeyer, Parker Kingston, Bruce Mitchell, Andrew Gentry, JoJo Phillips, Keanu Tanavasa, Tausili Akana, John Talmoe-Peo, Isaiah Glasker, Siale Acer, Falata Satuala, blah, 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 all the way down, like essentially the top end of BYU's talent list. What would that rank in terms of a transfer portal class? Well, it would probably be like number one. It'd be like what Texas Tech did a year ago and what they picked up in the portal. And that's what we need to celebrate is, yes, you'd like to see BYU making a splash in the transfer portal. But what they have done is bring the talent that was already there, didn't let it leave, and kept it in place. That's the thing about this. It does exact the cost. A good point here by SWB 1989. All the complaining about how quiet things have been in the transfer portal don't understand what it just costs to get all those recommitments for next season. Yes, there is a dollar figure, and it's probably sizable, to retain that talent in Provo. But you did not want to let those guys leave. That team that BYU had just went 12-2. And yes, they didn't measure up against Texas Tech. But get those guys all back, and then with the transfer portal still ongoing, go and supplement it. We saw Walker Lyons commit yesterday officially to BYU, signed with the Cougars, in fact. Kyler Casper's also signed. So they haven't gone over in the portal, but they've missed out on some guys. Leona Lefau, he picked Colorado, and as I understand it, if the numbers I have heard about his reason for picking Colorado are to be believed, yeah, good on you, son. You got paid big time to go play for the Buffs. So it's nice to see. Okay, so somebody saying JoJo hasn't committed yet to my knowledge, hasn't declared he's in the portal yet either. Hey, until JoJo Phillips decides he's not going to be at BYU, I'm counting him as sticking around in Provo, Utah. And goes back to the point, is the culture that is pervasive with what Kalani Sitake has built. It kept these guys in place along with the added NIL reserves, the revenue share and all that stuff that BYU has to keep this roster intact. So now you attack in terms of the transfer portal and go out and bolster it. And that's exactly what they're doing, because according to family members of Zach Yamauchi, who's a transfer from Stanford, well, he apparently is a BYU Cougar, and we'll talk a little bit more about that coming up next as well. Some other guys out there in the portal BYU is reportedly in the mix for. We'll get into all that as we kind of finish up this edition of Locked On Cougars next. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at GameTime. There's nothing like college football season, tailgates, packed stadiums, being right there in the middle of all the action. The best part is you get to experience the energy, the bands, the moments you'll always remember forever. But actually in your tickets, that part used to be the frustrating part. And with long queues, logins, prices jumping at checkout, and GameTime is here to change the dynamic of all of that. They're giving the advantage back to you as fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps. The best part is you can go on the GameTime app today. You can see exactly what your view from your seat will be before you buy. So you know exactly what you're getting. You want to go to South Florida and watch this national championship game? You can do that with the friends at GameTime. You go from browsing to buying tickets in just minutes. And the best part is you knowing your prices include fees right up front, right there in the app. You're not going to have prices jump when you go to checkout. It's far and away my favorite option when using GameTime, and I have used it multiple times. So take guesswork out of buying your tickets and do it with our friends over at GameTime. Go download the GameTime app today. Create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply against the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. All right, so if you want to be in the know of what I know about BYU football first among all Cougar fans, and I don't proclaim to be the insider, but I've got some good sources. And if you want that inside intel, join the Locked On Cougars Everydayer Club. You get access to ad-free episodes. You get access to our exclusive Discord server. If you want to do the all-access tier, you get access to what we used to call our Locked On Cougars Insider Group with the one-on-one text access to be able to interact with me and get that inside intel coming to your phone in the form of a text message. Go to lockedoncougars.supercast.com to join that today. And also, those of you watching this live right now, smash that like button on YouTube. I appreciate you guys doing that. If you're watching this or listening to it after the fact, do the exact same thing. So we'll see what happens with BYU in the transfer portal here. But we just talked about the Cougars doing a lot of good work in retaining their talent. There are things still out there for BYU to go after. And those include, as a good friend of the show, like Rob Wright III says, don't we need a kicker? Yes, Will Farron is leaving the BYU football program. I know that they have some kickers on the roster, but are they the options that BYU wants to stick with? Maybe not. We'll see what happens. There's also, I believe, a need for BYU to upgrade in the trenches. And that brings us to Zach Yamauchi. Now, I threw this out to our Locked On Cougars Insider group earlier this evening, but Zach Yamauchi's family on Facebook in particular has thrown up that he is committed to the BYU football program. Now, I have been burned before because some of you will remember earlier this week, we saw a quarterback, Dante Bell, announce a commitment to BYU. Well, after that, come to find out, he essentially stunned BYU by saying, hey, I'm committed. And BYU's like, who are you committing to? Because it's a little bit on hold right now. MVP KNJF, I want to do that. I'm just poor right now. Hey, I will just say this. There are some insider group members who will hook you up. So if you want to email me, lockedonbyu@gmail.com. I can see what I can do with our insiders group. There's some that are willing to, foot the bill if you want to be a part of the insiders group. So reach out to us. We get you squared away. But the bigger point is there are still needs for BYU on this roster. I'm not naive enough to think that BYU retaining their talent simply just with retention is going to win the Big 12 next year. No, it's not going to do that because other programs, namely Texas Tech, are going to be out there looming saying, okay, let's see what you got this year, BYU. Now, BYU doesn't face Texas Tech in the regular season, but there could be a rematch in the Big 12 title game. And that's the thing is BYU needs to have some reinforcements come in. Yeah, a kicker, absolutely. If you can find one that's been as good as a guy like Will Farron was for BYU, that'd be fantastic. I still think offensive and defensive line are critical needs for BYU, but a guy like Zach Yamauchi coming in from Stanford, I think that's what the doctor ordered because Zach is a 6'4", 325-pound offensive lineman who actually started 3 games this year off of a mission for the Stanford Cardinal. He played in 8 games overall for Stanford, started 3 of those as a member of the Stanford football program, and then decided to hit the portal. Well, BYU apparently has picked him up, and I think those are the type of guys you bring in. He's already been committed to a Power 4 program. He's been in a Power 4 setup in terms of training and the like, and it doesn't hurt the fact that he's a return missionary, understands what BYU is all about, and decided that's where he wants to be. So that's a nice part about what BYU is doing in the portal here is that they're going about their work more strategically versus there's an expression I think used, I might have been in my YouTube comments. BYU essentially kind of being a sniper right now with regards to the transfer portal. They're kind of targeted on where they're grabbing people. They're not having to blast with a shotgun to bring people in. That's the difference here about this BYU football program is they can go out and kind of target specific position groups. And I believe the offensive and defensive line are ones that you need to examine. I think wide receiver still is one you probably would like to bring in a top end receiver. Kyler Casper, I think, is a great piece to have if he can achieve his potential, but I think you need to have an insurance policy there. Whether JoJo Phillips does leave or Parker Kingston is not up to being that true number 1, I think wide receiver needs to be looked at. Backup running back. LJ Martin coming back is absolutely phenomenal. Sione Moa, when he's healthy, has been great, but you need to have a reliable backup that can step up when LJ's out of this game. So I really do think that there's other names out there. A good point by MVP right here. Didn't Oregon have an offensive lineman who was transferring out? That's Paki Finau. He is a guy that also BYU is very much in the mix for. He's another interior offensive lineman. I think 6'5", 300-plus pounds. He's played some tackle at Oregon, but I believe he'd probably be slotted more inside for the Cougars. But there are options out there for BYU. And, yes, losing the likes of a Leona Lefau out from Texas, who I thought what I was told by multiple people is he was a BYU guy. But money talks. And when what I was told, I'm reticent to throw out numbers because they're so unreliable. But if the money that was reportedly being offered to Leona Lefau was true from coming from Colorado, I don't blame him one bit for going to play for the Buffs because he's going to make some major cash. So I love the fact that BYU has a really, really good idea of what they need, and now they can kind of just be very specific about who they're going after. And Mala makes a good point here as well. It's not like there's a ton of room. You have graduates, yes, but a new class comes in, missionaries are coming home, and with a little turnover, BYU can't blitz the portal. That's a great point. I do think that BYU, can they bring in maybe 15 guys? It might be the top end of just kind of roughly in my head as I'm kind of doing math about how many guys are coming back, what I expect return missionary wise. And also, like I said, just it may be 15 guys that you might be able to bring back transfer portal wise. And BYU didn't have that many guys leave. I think, is it 9 guys at last count, 10 guys out in the portal for BYU. So that's the difference here with regards to the transfer portal for BYU. Yeah, you're seeing programs like Utah who are announcing commits seemingly every day. Those are programs that need guys like that because they've had mass roster turnover, and they're going to have mass roster turnover. Look at Iowa State. Didn't Iowa State have just 17 guys from Matt Campbell's squad this year that probably numbered north of 100 guys? Had 17 guys left over when the new coach, I think Jimmy Rogers, took over. 17. He's got to fill out a roster of at least 85 to have full scholarships, if not 100 plus. So yeah, there's a shotgun approach there that's going to be needed to be used. Whereas BYU, it's far more, like I said, kind of sniper more. And then one of the things mentioned surgical here as well in the chat. Robo Solaro, they can be surgical about how they go after it. BYU knows what they're after. Everybody, don't think that Kalani Sitake is not aware of what BYU needs. He saw firsthand what a program like Texas Tech can do against his team, and especially what they can do in the trenches against the Cougars. And that's the interesting part about this, is that BYU knows what they're chasing, and they're going about it the right way. Is making sure that these guys understand what BYU is all about, because it's about the program. The culture for BYU is critical. The money is secondary. Like, BYU can pay. Trust me, they can pay. But they need to make sure guys are coming to BYU for more than just a paycheck. Kalani Sitake said it himself. If you're coming to BYU for a paycheck, the facilities, something other than wanting to play high-level football, those are guys he wants to play against, because you're not bought in at that point. That's what Kalani Sitake wants. He wants football guys who are bought into the mission of what BYU is all about. So I really do think that that's a nice part, is to see BYU go out and do their work in the transfer portal. And somebody asking, well, what about wide receivers? Who are they looking at wide receiver? Feisty Sitake is a hard one to read, speaking of their wide receivers coach, because he has found guys like Darius Lassiter at Eastern Michigan, for example. Like, he finds dudes and they come to BYU. You're like, okay, what's that all about? And if he believes in Kyler Casper, I'm hard pressed to say that Kyler Casper is not going to be a guy or a dude for BYU. I'm just hard pressed to believe it's going to be right away, coming off a second straight season-ending foot injury. I think there's some nuance there. Good question here. Really hoping we can add Smith Snowden. Now, Smith Snowden is a guy that BYU has chased literally for years. He has never entered the transfer portal until now. He visited, I think, at least 6, maybe 7 programs this week, and BYU was one of them. He's the former Utah cornerback. And the thing is, you look at it and say that Smith is going to have options across the board. Michigan, Georgia, Colorado, BYU, among others, who are chasing this young man. Will the family ties to the state of Utah, in particular his dad, Will, who played at BYU, win out? I can't say that for sure. But, yeah, good point by Mala. Puka Nacua. Puka, when he came out of Washington, had really, really modest statistics. Yes, he had some injury concerns. We've all seen what Puka Nacua became at BYU, and we've all seen what he's done in the NFL. It was absolutely a monster for them in their win over the Carolina Panthers. By the way, some fun NFL football games today, by the way. If you missed those, I hope you didn't get you. I'm actually wearing a Utah Jazz sweatshirt. That was not fun. That was absolutely atrocious. But, yeah, and a good point about Smith Snowden. Where does he play? Well, here's the thing. If you were to get Smith Snowden, you put him with Trey Alexander, you put him with Evan Johnson. That is a 3 cornerback tandem. And whether it's Evan or Smith playing at that nickelback spot, that's a fearsome 3 cornerback alignment. That makes your defense pretty darn good. So we'll see what happens. But then just understand that BYU, while you may not hear them adding a ton of guys, and they probably won't add a ton, because like I said, I think at the very most, off the top of my head, they can maybe add 15. I think that number may be trending more towards maybe 10 transfer portal guys. But you don't need to add a ton, because BYU doesn't need a ton. So there you go. That's what I got for you guys tonight. Andrew films drums. Yes, why did Utah keep it close tonight? It's a rivalry game, guys. Rivalry games are nuts. I don't ever expect that that it's ever going to be a crazy outcome in terms of one way or the other in this rivalry. It has proven itself over years. Now BYU now has like a 4-game advantage in the overall series. Like it's 215 to 211 in terms of wins head to head with these two. So interesting point there. And then Philip, yes, did you see Morgan Stanley introduces the coaching staff at halftime? Yes, I did. I actually got 2 different videos texted to me by people in attendance, and good job by the Cougar fans, by the way. If it was not 50-50, it probably leaned 55-45 BYU in terms of what I saw from the different shots of the crowd. So way to go by BYU fans for invading the Huntsman Center. And there were multiple instances during that game. It felt like a home game for BYU. So we call the Huntsman Center Marriott Center North. Might be worth talking about. So yeah, that is going to do it. I'm sorry, MVP. I know it was 30 minutes, but you know, I got stuff to do. I got to go to bed. I have 9 a.m. church, folks. I have to teach a lesson tomorrow too. So got to get that all locked up. So as always, thank you truthfully for all your support, guys. Understand that once again, big win for BYU in basketball. Good job by the BYU football staff in retaining their top end talent. And then also understand that BYU is doing some really, really good work in the transfer portal, even though it may not be as splashy or as flashy or as big name-esque as you may want it to be. So ticket dispute. Well, BYU fans also had issues getting tickets to that basketball game. So that, to answer your question, Spencer, was a ticket dispute that they were raising prices retroactively, saying that you couldn't only buy certain amounts. So crazy stuff. So yeah, I am going to take off for the night. Have a good night, everybody. As always, thank you for all of your support of the podcast. Hope you guys will consider joining the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. It's lockedoncougars.supercast.com if you want to be a part of that. And until Monday, everybody, have a great rest of your weekend. And thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Go check out something like Locked On Big 12 or Locked On College Football as your second listen, and come back on Monday and be an everydayer right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.